give people more time or? Oh, good. Okay. Well, if everyone's okay with that, I want to honor who's here. But if everyone's okay, we can give. Oh, okay. Well, then we're not going to worry about those people. They're not coming. Okay, is this working? Oh, it is. Hey, so you're in the right place if you are at weight bias through a social justice lens. Thank you so much. I'm Sarah. I'll tell you a little bit more about me and then everything about why you're here at this workshop. But I want to just start by giving you a little at a glance of what today's gonna look like. Me. Okay, good. Okay. So, and everybody over there can see okay, right? We're gonna start with a little get to know you. And I'm actually going to give you some of the questions that were on the survey that I'm going to tell you more about later. Then I'll tell you about who I am and how it is that I got here from where I started. And then I'll tell you about the college that I work for and that I'm here representing. You may be shocked to learn that it's named Harper College if you're looking at the back at the bottom of the slides. I gave it all away at the beginning. Then we're going to dig into the survey. I'm going to take you through question by question, why and how those were the questions that were chosen, what the respondents came back as, and then we can talk a little bit more about why or why not. I'd love your feedback, which is probably a great time to also now say that please feel free to ask questions. You know, we're a small group, which means we can really work together. I'm happy to talk, but I'd love to hear your opinion. Gaps that I didn't see, which is another great lead into the fact that I am not an expert. I'm sharing how I got here is about my own personal journey as a fat woman, and then what I saw at my employer, and what I wanted to sort of help other people think more about or feel more seen in and things like that. So this is all from my experience. So we're going to dig into the survey. Then we're going to go through what happened after and the opportunities I've had at my institution to continue the good work. And then what's happening next. And then there'll be more space for you to ask questions or give feedback or comment or anything like that. So, and also please give me just a little grace because we're going to use this QR code for you to all engage with. Grace is going to come in that I have to exit PowerPoint and go into Mentimeter, and I'm not a teacher, which you'll learn, so I am not as versed at this. Also, just transparency, I do have my WebEx running in the background, and I'm recording the session for myself and to take back home. So I did get that approved through the con itself. So just so you all know, but it's only going to be recordings and my voice. And if actually at the end we get into some really conversation, I'll stop the recording too, if we want to do that. Okay, cross your fingers. Going out of power. Everybody got the QR code? Okay, now we're going to go into Mentimeter. And so the question on the screen is, where do you work? And the examples are things like corporate, private, public, education, self-employed, any words that you would use to describe what it is that you do or your time when you're not doing your fun family, playing with your cats like I would be, things like that. So I love a word cloud. I'm seeing nonprofit, pro resto. I have to. Or if you want to add it. Oh. University, yay! Higher ed, mental health services, thank you. Psychologist, healthcare, public. Where's middle school teacher, self-employed, yes. Therapy clinic, private, public, not-for-profit. All right, Awesome, awesome, awesome. So that's just to get an idea of like who's in our audience and what it is that we do. Now, if I do this, you should get the next slide. Okay, this was one of the questions that was on the survey, and I'm going to show it to you more later. Have you experienced weight-based bias at work? So blue bar is yes, so obviously. The pink bar is yes, but they just don't get it. Red, no, I have not experienced weight-based bias at my job. And yellow, honestly, I really don't know. Here, that was the whole Oh, God, I'm so sorry. This is where that grace comes in. Thank you. Okay. Well, I saw a really, gosh, I don't understand. I don't know any of the things that you guys just said, but I'll turn it around like the old school way and show you how pretty of a slide that you're making. I wonder if I can go back. Huh? Yeah. So I must have done, as long as the PowerPoint comes back on, we're almost done with this. He was, no. Okay, one more. Thank you for your grace. So, okay, yes, we have a lot of, yes, obviously I experienced weight-based bias at work. Yes, but like they don't get it, right? That's that like unintended like harm, microaggressions. No, and then, yeah, honestly, I don't know, which is okay too. Because there's lots of reasons why we may not understand, and I think you'll see that in the survey too. So it's not showing you on your screens. Oh, interesting. It's the words it's showing, but not the like how other people are responding to. Okay, so maybe next time I'll use something else. It does, but I will also tell you that I think that the numbers are skewed because there are a few people that are on my WebEx that are watching from Chicago, and I think they chose to respond as well. So I think our numbers are off. Thank you guys. I like that. Okay, yeah. Please select each of the ways you have experienced bias related to weight at your workplace. And this is kind of tiny, so I'm just going to read through them. Someone made a comment or a joke about my weight in front of me. I overheard a comment or joke someone made about my weight. Someone made a comment or joke about another person's weight in front of me. I overheard a comment or joke about someone else's weight. Actually, you can see this on your own screen, so I won't read them all. But and then what this would show if this was coming up, but I'm good. PowerPoint worked. It's just this thing that's not showing. So you know, I'm just letting you know. Okay. These are going to show you little dots of where people are responding to these issues. Most of the PowerPoint works, but when I try to go to my internet, it's not showing that. Have I destroyed the world?
Therefore, yeah.
People like, I think one, we're taking a little break while we try to see if there's, I think it's gonna be okay when I go back to the PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh.
Okay. But like any one person who's the power to struggle, we're going to help with being really early. And are any of us? But that's a different conversation. Okay, so things that are really popping off, and you'll see this is directly from the survey. I had posted a QR code to the person who just came in. We're almost done with this, but we're gonna go right back immediately. Someone made a comment or joke about my weight in front of me. I overheard a comment or joke about someone made about my weight. Lots of responses about the next two. Someone made a comment or joke about another person's weight in front of me. I overheard a comment or joke about someone else regarding his or her weight. So people talking about their own bodies in front of you in a derogatory way, people talking about other people in front of you, and maybe even talking about you. So now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint and it was, hi, it was.
Hello.
Oh, there's so much happening.
Yeah, so sometimes when you get out of it, you have to just plug and unplug it back in. But you're on extended mode right now. So it's reading this as another display versus just mirroring what you have here.
Oh, I should have told you that. I also have a WebEx running, so that's part of what's happening here. How do I get just back to my power? There's so many things happening. Thanks for your patience. Just imagine, this is just me trying to get to know you. So we're actually all done with the website, so if you want to just X that out.
So we just need just the PowerPoint?
We just need PowerPoint now, yeah. Don't X this thing out, but if you just.
So I'm just gonna put your thing on duplicate mode so that.
Does anybody know what you're? Okay. Perfect. Can I give you a high five?
Of course.
Okay, so that was the QR code. So. Perfect. So now, just so you know, what I'm seeing on my screen is different than it was. So that's why I was like, wait, what technology is? Oh. You know, whenever the new ones on Facebook are cool, I'm offended because it made me fatter than I told it. And I don't know where it got that information. And I can't remember where that is to change it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so thank you again for your patience. Sorry about all that technology. But, who am I? So, this is a non-exclusive list of everything I can think I wanted to tell you. I have two cats. You'll see a picture of them later. I'm a sign language interpreter. That's what I do in my day-to-day job at the college that I work at. This is my super exciting pet project that I have some space and capacity. I'm a doctoral student. I'm in my second year of coursework at Northern Illinois University, which is not far from Chicago. If you're familiar with Chicago at all, you know that it's, thank you. So you know that, like, basically there's that radius where you can say it's Chicago, and anything other than that. People that live in or near Chicago, it's important to say, I live in the suburbs of Chicago. I don't live in Illinois. I'm the Pride Club co-advisor at our college. That's something I'm really proud to be a part of. I am a Swiftie, which is still a label I'm getting used to. Folklore beyond, not really so much before. I'm a burner. I've been in the community just for a couple of years, and I really like the principles that, sorry, someone's asking if you've ever heard of Burning Man. Okay, so I've not been to Burning Man, but there's a network of regional smaller burns, and that's really where there's great community. And their principles are great, and just the ways they try to decommodify and sort of rebuke capitalism and all that stuff. I love The Office. I'd like to thank COVID for that. That's when I really got to watch it all. I promise you, if we have a conversation, I might not say it because I'm learning to be able to connect any conversation back to any episode. You're welcome, or I'm sorry. I'm from Baltimore. I grew up in Baltimore. I live in Chicago now. Go Ravens. We did not make it to the next big game again, but that's okay. The embarrassing thing I might say today is that I really love the Twilight series. And that's been something that's been a long time thing for me. I have plants, and I'm a fat girl. And that last one is an identity that really came as a challenging one to use that word. It's something I've been challenging myself to just say to other people, right? So it's one thing if you can identify that way. It's another thing to identify that. And so that's something that through a lot of this work that's happening for me actively. And if you can't guess, my favorite color is pink. Okay, so how did I get here? In 2007, I got divorced and I wanted to explore. I wanted to meet new friends. I wanted to date. I wanted to get out there. And I knew that I couldn't do that I didn't feel like I stood a chance to do that in like straight sex places, right? So your regular bar, dance club, whatever. So I learned about as I've always called it, the BBW parties, right? So the bash community, which is in Chicago. There have been a couple of different groups over the years. When I got involved, they were doing like monthly dances at hotels, and you would just go, and it was great to meet people and, feel comfortable in your body and be on the dance floor and just feel seen, which is a lot of what I imagine a lot of people are feeling this weekend, because that's how I feel too. But it's very social, not very social justice or fat liberation or activism or any of those things. And so we know that all of those spaces are important. But the pictures I'm showing, most of them are from like the Halloween bash that we would go to here. And my good friends, my soul sisters, and I, we won from each of these pictures of costumes. And then our one good guy friend who's just like the glue that holds everybody together. But if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here, because it was through my connections to that community, and then making real and lasting friendships with other fat women who also felt good in their bodies, who also wanted to express themselves and feel seen and free. So that's how I came so far. And then a couple of years ago, I had this opportunity the picture on the bottom is the logo for our social justice leadership cohort. And that is the project that my survey comes out of. So Harvard College is very focused on trailblazing in a lot of ways, and one of them is also through our PPI work, right? So we have a vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a cultural center. We have employee resource groups. Right now that we have queer employees of color, and disabled employee resource groups. We also have a diversity symposium every year in October. And then just starting last year, we started having disability symposiums. So those happen in the spring. And the second one is going to be this year, which is awesome. We will have professional development for employees. And then we also have disability cultural programming, which is really the effort to make the campus more inclusive in general and to normalize disability across campus. And so I applied to be in the cohort. There were 6 of us. It's intentionally a small cohort. We learned more about the history of our school. We learned more about social justice. And then we sort of merged the two in the culminating project of the project. So my project was my survey, which I'm going to talk about. And I think because of who I am and who my body has always been, I knew that I wanted to do something related to anti-fat bias. Like, I saw it, but I didn't see it, if you know what I mean. And I see people shaking their heads like, you're feeling something, you don't know if other people are feeling it, or you start to learn that other people are feeling it through these conversations that you have with people. And I just thought, this is radical. Nobody's talking about this yet, but I know it's there, right? I see the looks on other people. I think that I know what maybe they're thinking, and I certainly know what I'm thinking. So just thought if I could just thread the needle that what I'm thinking and what's really happening exists. And that's what the picture on the right is. So every week we have a newsletter that comes out, an e-newsletter, and it's facts, events, interviews with people, and there's always a photo of the week. And this picture was the photo of the week. And it says photo of the week at the top, decisions, decisions. And then on the left-hand side is a round mouse pad that says commit to be fit. And this was from our campus rec center. And then next to it, and I don't know why, but for me, like the fact that the plate and the mouse pad are the same size is interesting, is a piece of 3-layer cake. And at the bottom, the caption says, commit to be fit or enjoy a slice of cake. Right. Community Relations Manager Amy Granger, who is a lovely woman, which sort of speaks back to what I'm going to get to, had a tough choice to make. As captured in this photo, she calls decisions, right? So like, this is so normalized. Ew. But the people who published it didn't say ew. When we took the picture and sent it and didn't think anything of it, because it's just so normalized. So when I saw it, it was like divine intervention. Like the angels up in the clouds and they went, oh, and he, I was like, I can do something with this. And so let me tell you a little bit more about Harper. William Rainey Harper College opened in September of 1967. That's a really long name, so we just call ourselves Harper. We serve approximately 26,000 students annually in Chicago's northwest suburbs. Our mission I added because I do think it's really important. I mean, I think any organization's mission ought to be important, but I particularly love ours. Harper College enriches diverse communities by providing quality, affordable, and accessible education. Harper College, in collaboration with its partners, inspires the transformation of individual lives, the workforce, and society. So transformation, like, we could have chosen any word. And I know that tireless decision-making was used to choose that word. And I see it in the day-to-day work that we do and the initiatives we care about. And I think it fits really well into some of the ways I've used to talk to some groups about why this is so important and why we should care. So a couple of the pictures that you see are of our campus. It's really beautiful. It's a pretty big school. At the top, there's a graduate. Over on the far side, we have some Indigenous folks performing at an event on campus. Over here, closest to me, is our Pride Night. So we have an event in October around National Coming Out Day, which we call Pride Fest. We're going into our 4th year, I believe. And it's an event for our students and really the whole campus community. Because again, we're public school because we're community college, right? So we're the community's college, which I think also helps, like why I was able to get buy-in for more support, because we're not a private school where we're only maybe really concerned about the people on the campus, but anybody could come to our campus. Is it warm in here? We could prop the door. Okay. I'm warm, but I'm always warm. So if we need to prop the door, I'm for it. So Pride Fest is a social and informative event, and then it culminates in a march across campus. So that is why they are running across campus. And then the picture next to that I wanted to include because that's our 6th president, Dr. Edith Proctor. She's our first female and first Black president. And so I wanted you to know what kind of place we are. Okay, and this is just more stats about Harper. We are a Hispanic serving institution, which means that we've hit more than 25% in Latinx students. We have a 1 million degrees program, which helps students with socioeconomic challenges. We also have a Promise program, which is a high school to college. If you hit all of this criteria, you get your first year free. We are 69% part-timers, which I guess sort of tracks as a community college. And then you can see the breakdown of our demographic, graduation rates, advancement rates. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else really important I want to tell you. Community education students, that might not be credit. might be more of your adult learners, not necessarily coming back for credit. The degrees, the certificates, we've got a lot of certificate programs, and that's your get you in, get you out, get you into a job type of education. And then dual credit, 5,000 students who are in high school taking classes with us at the same time, just to paint that picture. Okay, so now we'll start talking about the survey. Do you have any questions first, just about the school or anything? Sure. Thank you, I didn't say that. So the doctoral program is actually a cohort that I'm in because I'm an employee where I work. I was able to apply and get in, so that's awesome. Which makes it great because we are a cohort as opposed to just being, you know, in this sea of doctoral scholarship all by yourselves. Like it still feels awful most of the time, but that's what you're supposed to feel like. But the degree is a doctorate of education in curriculum, social inquiry, and equity. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I hope my focus in my dissertation will be. Plot twist, it's going to relate to this work. So let me tell you a little bit about the survey before I show you every question and all the results. 9 questions total. I got a approval from IRB, which is the Institutional Research Board, which means that like they vetted it and I can present it to you. I can write a paper about it. I can, you know, rent an airplane and put the stats in the back of the thing, but I feel like it would be really long, so we're not going to do that. As of February 16th, 2024, which was when the survey came out, there was 1,594 employees. Now we have a lot of different employee groups on campus, like most colleges do. There's a couple of union groups. And so I wanted to make sure that we could capture as many of our employees as possible and not just be focused on any one group, because obviously that might skew the data, I think. So 203 people participated, which is about almost 13%. The research department was really excited because they said that no one ever does their surveys at that like high number, so that made me feel good. Non-duplicated. So although I didn't know if I connected to everyone, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. I do know that anybody could only take the survey. So if they signed in, they took it, they tried to do it again 2 weeks later, they couldn't. Because we're a big school, we do a lot of surveying of our employees. Like after every major event, there's a survey. So I knew we already had that infrastructure in place. And I talked initially with my champion, Dean, Dr. Irie, who was my support while I was in the social justice cohort, about just utilizing that infrastructure that already existed. Problem was that one, the college didn't want, and I totally get this, I don't feel like they were rude about it. They didn't want employees to think that this was coming from them. They didn't expect it. They didn't want that employees would expect them to do something with this or to make change about it. And I think that's fair because this is my project. It's not on their radar yet. So by doing this, it helped them see that it needs to be on our radar. But so what that also meant was that I took a really grassroots approach. Prior to launching the survey, I was talking to everybody who would listen about it. Our poor president, like every time I saw her, it's like, hey, Dr. Cooper, hey, did you know about the social justice cohort? Hey, did you know that I'm in, like, I'm sure she was like, get out of the face. Who are we? Stop talking to me. But so I tried to lay the groundwork with my network and then their networks about it's coming, please, when you get it, please respond. You know, we wanted to set the date of when it would launch, not too close to the start of the spring semester, because from fall to spring, you have that really short window where you're trying to get ready. You didn't want to do it too close to spring break. I had to be done by April, so I couldn't do it toward the end, and who would do it during the summer? So we launched it in February, and then it just sort of rippled out from connections. I reached out to the unions, the faculty senate, which is the faculty union, facilities, just trying to get it out there and hoping that those people would also share it. So it was good that it was able to be non-duplicated, since I also couldn't see who responded to it. And that was how we figured out how to distribute it. The one thing is because I don't know how far it reached, I can't confirm that we touched every employee group. theoretically, that's, I guess at this point, at this level, it's not a problem. I would be curious to be able to aggregate that or disaggregate the data in that way, but it's not, doesn't have to be part of what we did. It was available for about 2.5 to 3 weeks. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Was any demographic?
That's a great question. No. The 9 questions were all about weight bias. And then the last one wasn't open-ended. The 9th question was open-ended, just eliciting more feedback. But no, I didn't take any demographics. We talked about that. I talked with Sherry Brown, who was like phenomenal in IR, just really helping me craft the questions and, you know, putting my ideas into like more appropriate ways of doing research. And so, no, we didn't collect any of that kind of data. Speaking of collecting the research, because I sent it out myself and it didn't come from this arbitrary alias email, I was also able to not only include like the instructions of how to take the survey, but like before you click on the link, here's a blurb from Sara. And so I believe that that was able to create the authenticity of like what I'm getting at and why this might be important. So the tone and the tenor of the question were really important. We wanted to be mindful about what words people commonly understand and what words they don't, and if we wanted to include a definition or not. And we also wanted to make sure not to have like leading questions, right? So it was important for me to, and I learned this thereafter, like you don't want to go into something like this anticipating that everybody's going to have this terrible experience and it's going to be awful. It's more about going in with that curious lens of what might be happening. And then available for 3 weeks, I was getting the information. And then the graphs that I'm going to show you were all generated by our institutional research office. So let's dig in. I just want to do a little time check. Question 1, how would you describe your personal weight right now? And then the 4 choices were underweight, normal weight, overweight, or very overweight. So intentionally, I didn't include information like BMI, which is bullshit. I didn't include weight ranges, like this word equates to this range or any percentages or anything like that. And this to me was really important because we needed to I wanted to set the stage of people coming into this survey and setting in their minds how they perceive themselves. So 48.8% consider themselves overweight, 14.3% said very overweight. I thought that, so that's 63%, just well over half, right? Question 2. Using the scale below, please tell us how you feel about each of the following statements. And then 2 is like 2A and 2B. In my day-to-day life, I feel people treat me differently than others because of my weight. And then the 2B is in my day-to-day life, I feel like it's difficult for people to relate to me because of my weight. So important words, right? Treatment versus connection or relatability. Strongly agree, agree, neither agree or disagree. Disagree or strongly disagree. A lot of these when I'm going to talk to you, it'll be like the top 2 that I'll talk about, right? So strongly agree and agree. So 34.9% of the people surveyed said they either strongly agree or agree that people treat them differently. But only 18.4% said that they feel like it's difficult to relate to people because of their weight. So I thought this was really interesting. And to be fair, like as this survey is more than a year old, I'm still coming back to the data and thinking about things in new ways, like just after being here so far. So people don't see these 2 things in the same way, right? the way that they're being treated versus whether or not they're relating and connecting to people. I think it's interesting that those two numbers are so different. And I think it's something we'll talk more about if you think about the through line of like connection and relatability and belongingness. Okay. So question 3, using the scale below, please tell us how you agree or disagree with each of the following statements. While working at Harbor I feel all of these different things. So in the first one, I'm gonna come over here. I hope that's not. Do a little van on action. Okay, so I feel like people treat me differently than others because of my weight. Strongly agree and agree, 27.3%. The next one down, I feel like it's difficult for people to relate to me. Those two are like the first question, right? 15.4%. I feel like people treat me with less respect or courtesy because of my weight. 19.7% of the people either agreed or strongly agreed with that. I have experienced bullying or teasing by work colleagues about my weight, 11.9%. The next one down, I feel like my work is not valued, 6%. And then I feel like I have been overlooked for advancement or promotion because of my weight, almost 9%. So even if only, let's say 10% of our employees feel this way, I think if these numbers were about students, our administration would definitely want to talk about that, right? So I guess what I'm saying is I think that there's definitely a baseline for people to get curious about why people feel these ways. Okay, so question 4 is, at Harper, during times when I felt judged about my weight, I have been around the following groups of people, select all that apply, and then for others, please specify. We have these written in comments. So 43% of people either said that it's coming from work colleagues, supervisors, or other campus people. 57.5% said I haven't felt judged about my weight. I have a little bit of issue with students, visitors on campus. But peers and supervisors, right? So if we look down here at some of the specific comments, I just have some like themes of that. Some people weren't sure about terms like internalized fat phobia. Some people talked about age versus weight, and maybe it was that they're in a bigger body, but they think they're really being judged about their age. Some people talked about their own weight privilege that they know they have because they're in a smaller body. And then some people said it was combinations of the above, right? But so, and again, we're gonna dig into the specific ways that people felt the bias. It's their colleagues and their peers, right? It's their supervisor. That's where this is mostly coming from. And I'm definitely, in general, a proponent of, if your employees, we already know that happy employees stay. But working in a college, our mission generally always goes back to our students, right? And because we're a community college, the whole community. So if we apply the fact that happy employees stay and probably do their jobs better, then they're probably also going to treat the students better. And if our employees feel like 43% of their experience, if they have bias against them in their bodies, is coming from their colleagues or their supervisors, then I would argue that their students probably have similar numbers. Now, of course, there's generational differences at this point that we're still learning, but I would imagine there should be or might be around the same size. Question 5. And in here, you'll see that we start to do a little bit of an explanation, right? Unfair or unequal treatment of people because of their weight can occur in various ways. Below is a list of some biases that might be experienced. Please select each of the ways you have experienced bias related to weight at Harper, and people could choose more than one. Someone made a comment or joke about my weight in front of me, 18.9%. I overheard a comment or joke that someone made about my weight, almost 11%. Someone made a comment or joke about another person's weight in front of me, 33%. I overheard a comment or joke about someone else regarding his or her weight, almost 31%. Someone sent me a GIF in a group chat that was mocking of weight, about 6%. Images I saw or something I read on Harper's intranet portal perpetuated weight bias. That would be like the newsletter I told you about. That was at almost 6%. Images I saw or something I read on the external website that perpetuate weight bias, smaller, almost 3%. Images I saw or something I read inside Harper, which was that newsletter. So the portal is this intranet, and the inside Harper is a part of that. That's something I saw or read in Harper Happenings. That's a student-focused newsletter. And that's at 3.3%. And then almost 59% of people said, I don't feel like I've experienced unfair treatment. So in terms of those numbers, as I said, we sort of define the bias. 33% of have this bystander experience, right? That like someone saying something in front of you that offends you and it's about somebody else. 30% overheard a comment or joke like someone else. So these two, right? They're different and important. So about another person's weight or a person making a comment about their own bodies. The thing I think is the most interesting is the first one, or maybe not interesting, it's all interesting, but just sort of shocking and sad, which is someone made a comment about my weight in front of me. Almost 19% of the people, and that speaks to like just the normalization, commonplace. I don't want to use the word natural. I don't want to say how natural this is because this isn't natural, but how normalized and commonplace this experience is. And how even in a place that touts itself as a trailblazer for change, transformation, and DEI work, again, just because of the systems that we live in, don't realize that this is a problem. And ultimately, at the end of the day, any institution is like, just don't know how to do anything, and we go to our little box and type on a box, and then yeah. I think that's a great point because I did make my note for myself. I just can't remember when it was. Right, if we go back to the beginning, like you just said, 63% of people said my body is overweight or very overweight. And they're having these experiences. I did not. I mean, I have a share. Go on me. So this is perfect because I'm sorry, I'm just gonna get ahead. I'm actually taking statistics right now, and we're learning SPSS. Has anything divine that you send good thoughts to, please send it to me before me in the statistics class. But and I think that also relates back to that question about treatment versus connection. And I think I see where I talk about that more. But so these experiences that you're having, and then whether you normalize that experience, like this is happening to me, but like it's okay, or I accept it, or then I do leave my job. if they're like skewing it. Yeah, in the I'm not gonna share all of the 60 comments that I got, so 203 people responded. 60 people took the time to type in comments, and some of them were really long and really helpful. But at least one person said, like, I feel like this survey implies that I, like, am a person in this experience, and so because it's like the whole general population, to your point, like, if they don't see themselves in that way, or they don't have those problems, then right, they're gonna fall in that 59%. Yeah, yeah.
Like, I think that what you're saying, like, the normal weight or underweight might skew it, but it's somebody who has incredibly thin friends on the opposite end of the spectrum. That was my biggest ally because so many people felt comfortable talking to them. So I feel like I'd be interested to see where people think that, oh, well, you're skinny, so I can talk to you about it. Or like, I had a friend who was very much called like blackout or like skinny, like in a bad way. Like, repeatedly, like people felt comfortable making jokes because like, oh, you're so tiny. Oh, so like, yeah.
And if please ask what their weight is right now, because my mom is fat, she's 90 people right now. She's been tiny, and everybody like, look great, but she wasn't a skeleton.
Right, right, and then. Right, right, and the fact that she's unfortunately going through this other experience, and people who don't know all that story, are just saying how great you look. Which is, again, part of that normalized, just like, oh, well, you're small, that's good. To your point, in the red sunglasses, which are very cute. Our wellness manager is someone who I've collaborated a lot, and we'll talk about that, and she is very slim. And she experiences that all the time, that, you know, because she's the like her title, right? She walks into a space and people are like, oh, it's Beth. You know, she's the wellness person. Let me hide that cake. And so she's combating that from the other side too. And as I saw in the comments, like wellness gets coded a lot, right? So fat folks don't always feel good in wellness spaces because it's not necessarily that like you're accepted and welcome to be here as you are. So she's changing that narrative too. But yes, she walks into spaces and it's Beth is here, what's your takeaway? Or people say things to her about her own body, about like, so she's getting that judgment of like, well, you're super slim. So, yeah. Is there another hand? Yeah.
Was there a conversation about whether? Why was the choice made not to?
I wanted to. I thought that it would be curious. I was curious about like gender, I guess age groups, you know, anything, racial identity. When I sat down with institutional research and talked with them about like what I really want to get at, we realized that that information would be helpful. There's lots more I could do with it. But because this was so new, we also didn't want anyone to feel like any kind of identifying information was out there, right? So if you go all the way back, I'm not going to go all the way back to this, but our student population, I think we have percent. Sorry, hold on. Right, thank you. Right, so 4.5% Black folks. Now that's the students, but let's say that we know that we don't have that many Black folks working for us too, or we know that we have, you know, if we start to go into gender or, you know, so there's lots of women at the institution, but at the administration tends to be male heavy. So if I had said, okay, where are you in the institution and are you a person of color and what's your gender? It starts to get identifiable, right? And because this is so new and so vulnerable, you didn't want I could figure out who they were at all. So that's a really great question because I do think it would be great, but I think because of where we are in this being so new for us, that the anonymity was really important. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Visual information.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is definitely step one, or maybe even step zero. Were you gonna say something?
Well, I was just, yeah, because I was curious, is there are plans to continue building and bettering this?
Yeah, I can, let's see, what question are we on? 5? We are almost there. And thank you so much for your interest and just, I was a little worried that this part, going through all the questions might be tedious, but I think it's beneficial and it sounds like you do too, so thank you. Okay, so question 6, using the scale below, please tell us how you feel about each of the following statements. At Harvard, judgment about my weight has negatively affected my sense of belonging. Okay, so here we go again. We're talking about treatment versus being able to relate. So these numbers are not that big, right? Only 2% said, yes, I strongly agree. And only 10% said, I agree that at Harvard, judgment about my weight has negatively affected my sense of belonging. Then think about those numbers about treatment versus connection. So,
Or if I got what you had done. Because if you look at treatment, like, if I as a fat white person, I might feel treated differently for my weight, but I still have privilege as a white person of being more normalized in so many spaces. So
Yeah.
that piece is less. So. So, yeah, it might feel different, but it's it's why from right, it has to be everybody.
Right. Right. Right.
You know, it's yeah.
Right. Well, and like, so just to give you a little, sort of wraparound information, the employee resource groups. The first employee resource group was DREAM, which is the acronym, which I will mess up, so I'm not gonna try to remember it, but that's for our folks of color, right? And it's always been folks of color, not any one specific group, and now you're seeing that because people are changing, people are understanding more about, you can't just have that one umbrella, you know, right, that different groups need their own spaces. But, so that group is like fledgling, they've been there for 20 years or something like that. They have a mentorship program, big community, very involved, very active, very vocal. And for those of you who work in higher ed, you know that things get done because of faculty, right? Like they have the biggest, strongest voice, faculty. I'm a pro tech union member, so that means I'm the professional technical folks. And so there's more of us, but they're stronger, which makes sense. So, the next employee resource group is SAFE, which is our employee resource group with queer folks. And the reason I'm telling this story is actually about this group. SAFE is so small that they do allow allies to join. And the reason they're so small is because people don't necessarily feel safe to be a part of the group, right? So we don't track data about our employees in terms of all the other things about equity that we'd like to see more information on. And so that's just, you know, I know one faculty member who unfortunately, she passed away during the pandemic, but she came out after she got tenure. I know at least one other person who, but that was their experience too, you know, because you just maybe aren't safe.
Perceived, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I think in terms of real or perceived, yeah, go ahead.
if there was another risk factor that wasn't stigmatized, like fatness, that was putting employees at risk, they wouldn't follow up over this. I mean, it's fat, I mean, I don't know her, but, you know,
Right.
but 12% is a big ask. So we were looking at a class size.
How about
No.
Yeah.
That's a big effect size. Like I'm trained in research. That is a big number. So I'll talk to you after. But
I would love that. Thank you. I was going to put out my business cards too, and not that I expect everybody's gonna like run and grab one, but let me just put them up now so I don't forget. Uh, Maybe I'll sell them to you. I don't really want. Okay, I did it. We'll do this later. But so, gosh, I'm so glad that we're sharing the space because you're helping me think of things differently or things that I haven't yet occurred to, or, you know, where we go next. And, but some notes that I did make about this is like, I thought it was interesting to think about judgment doesn't affect the sense of belonging felt, allegedly. But what does that mean about external judgment and belonging? And can belonging be a thing that gets measured by our own internal barometers? Like, so if I already judge myself and I already know that I live in this fat body and I just come to be used to the microaggressions, then does this make more sense? That you think that, well, it's not a way that I engage in belonging because I don't even know to think about it that way? Like, those are things that I started to think about. And then I have another note about that in 2 slides. Question 7. At Harper, what barriers have you experienced because of your weight? Using the scale below, tell us the level that you have or have not experienced weight-related barriers for each of the following. So things that I didn't define is what a major barrier is or a minor barrier. Yeah, please, oh gosh, yes. Please take pictures, and if you want, I can certainly send you the slides after. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thanks for your interest. So, great. So, we didn't define a major and minor barrier. We left that up to people to choose and decide for themselves. But we're seeing numbers, like if you add the 2, I just added major and minor together for purposes of kind of talking about people that experience a barrier. Participating in events, 26%, participating 2%, traveling, 11%. There was a specific comment in question 9 that we'll talk about later. Spirit gear, 38%. So our college, you know, the bookstore usually goes up to 2x with the gear. A couple of years ago, actually just before the survey, they gave out free spirit wear to everybody. Like, we open the week before the students come back and we have a big woo-hoo, and everybody enjoys free lunch and our president talks, and isn't that great? And one particular year before this, they had spirit wear, like lots of different stuff that was just for employees. And at the luncheon, they had some sizing that you could try on. Everybody could pick one, things like that. That stuff went up to 3x. Not all the 3x stuff was there to be tried on. In another example, so as part of the social justice cohort, and if I'm being honest, the part of me that loves free shit, this was one of the major reasons why I joined the cohort, because at the end you get this fancy ass jacket. Everybody gets these, like the kind, like the slick, you know, and then it's lined inside and it's got that embroidered. Like, I'm one of those people. I was really worried about what the sizing was gonna look like. So there was me and another dude in the cohort that were like bigger people. And the cohort was run by the people who run the cultural center and do all the DEI. So like, they're very aware of everything but this stuff, right? Because this is just not in your normal frame of reference, unfortunately. So when it came time to give them their sizes, they had some jackets that we could try on. And I think they had a 2X. But I tried not to be a good sport. And then I said, well, you know what, tell me, like, I looked at the tag, and I know you guys do this, right? The gymnastics. So I looked at the tag and I went to that company's website. And because it's a company that does a lot of that kind of spirit stuff, they had like 18 different jackets that looked like this one. And all of those size charts were not the same. And they did have up to 4X for women, for the women's cut, because of course it was women's cut versus men's cut. And then I could have gotten the men's cut and looked like I was wearing a sack, or I wore the women's cut, A-line seaming, right? So I'm doing all of this in front of her, and, because I'm sure you guys know this trick, you look at the size chart, you go to like Torrid or a shop that you frequent, you look at their size chart and your size, and you're comparing to guess what might effing fit you. And she was just like, I never realized this. I am so sorry. And she didn't mean it that like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cry. It's like, you know, fragility tears. It wasn't that. But it doesn't occur to you if you've never experienced it. And that was just so and I actually just sort of solved my own research, right? Like, I wanted that jacket. I wanted to wear that jacket, and I wanted people on campus to be like, oh, she's wearing that. It's a marker for the shit you give a shit about, right? Strong dislike. So the spirit wear was huge because just the semester before they put out all this, and it was nice stuff. It was like a nice knitted sweater, there's a blouse, there's this, there's that. And, and so these things matter. And, and the irony is that like maybe you think, well, it doesn't affect a lot of people, so it's no big deal. Like that could be something that people tell you. But when 63% saying that they're overweight or very overweight, you're not talking about a small number. And again, to your point, small numbers. Right. So eating on campus, 25%, exercising on campus, 31%. So I just think it's interesting to look at the other side of that information too, right? The people who said, no, this doesn't affect me. So you're experiencing the barriers, but that sense of belonging, like that doesn't make sense to me either. Right, unless you think you deserve it, internalized and anti-bias, exactly. No, you're, I'm glad. Yeah, we're having a chat, I love it.
So I've never really been for my school shirt.
Sure,
Because I've always been too extra.
right,
So like, I tell myself I don't care, but if somebody was to give me what straight size girls on my campus were wearing,
right,
maybe I would participate, maybe I would feel
right.
more.
So not to like get into your like mental health, but it's a chicken and the egg, right? Like, do you not care about this because it hurts less not to care? Or do you not care about this because you genuinely don't care about this? Like, I flew in yesterday. I got here before I came to the con before I could get into my room upstairs. Upstairs. Didn't feel good until I was able to put on some lipstick and a cute dress. Like, that's just part of it. Whether or not I should feel that way or not, I do.
We don't know. Right, so psychologists, and they literally don't. And so a lot of things, they register for classes, go to every single classroom, go like fit and then drop. And the University of Michigan in particular, things was, their seating is terrible. Students out of the university fit.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if you're, I don't know, but we don't know who's not there. And I
Yeah.
just want. Right, like. If we can't even go, then gosh, that's how many, yeah. It's, that has to be the time.
Right.
economics already class in college, learning that the hiring rates, well, they'll hire men for women because they assume that women are just gonna leave. And they'll pay men more because they assume they'll need to support a family. And it's just like, we're screwed from the get-go.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Right, right, right.
And I'm curious about this saying this stuff. Like, have you never experienced a barrier to access? Like the demographic information, like who are these like folks? Are they people who are in just like are saying that I've never experienced it. Like this doesn't apply to me. I don't care.
Right, right. Yeah, thank you. Okay, question 8. So this is the last one. Before we get into just the open-ended question, tell me everything about like what you want to say. Yeah, so you'll see, okay, so the question, when on campus, what barrier have you experienced because of your weight? Using the scale below indicate the level that you have or have not experienced weight-related barriers with the following. And we intentionally, where earlier we didn't dig into demographics, we dug into chairs because that is as you just indicated, a major barrier for folks. So I didn't want to say was chairs and just leave it at that, right? So we really dug into lack of elevators, narrow stairwells, chair size, unstable or wobbly chairs, chairs with arms, chairs on wheels, chairs that are connected to desks or tables, chairs in our theater spaces, distance between your office and parking, and climbing stairs. And, you know, to the point that you just made, colleges and universities have a lot of different kind of seating. For the like main lecture halls, like our campus has, we do have a couple of lecture halls, but unless it's like a bio level class, you know, you're probably not going to be filled. But at least one of the ones I can think of is the table comes all the way across, the chair's connected, you pull it out, you sit it, you know, the timer, like if you get out too fast, goes boom, right? So I don't fit comfortably in. The smaller theater on campus, which is going to be renovated next year, has the kind of small theater seats and then a table that comes up like this and goes across you. So it takes even more space away. We just built a new film lab, which has like AMC quality, sound, image, everything. And those seats are very comfortable, I will say. I was nervous, especially because like, you know, when in your town, if you're building like a new Wendy's and they put the sign up before, Wendy's is coming. I'm really excited about Wendy's. It should have been a bigger restaurant, but anyway, they have a sign about the film lab. And there were 2 different shots of like computer generated images of what it was going to look like. And from the backs of the chairs, the wood panel looked really wide. And I was like, oh, those are going to be big chairs. And I care about this because I'm in a big body. But then on the other side, when they showed the picture from the other way, they looked small. And I was like, I don't know. So they are big and they are comfy. They do have those little desks, and they're okay. It's not terrible, but the chair itself is very comfortable. So that's good. They did something right. So we dug into the types of chairs because we have so many different kinds of chairs on campus. And, you know, as you would assume, the likely suspects that we talked about, like different kind of chairs that are the biggest problems or the biggest barriers. But again, I want to think about barriers versus bias. And I would say that like if you think barrier and bias, the barrier is like, in my mind, the action. And like the bias is maybe the feeling. So people are acknowledging that they're experiencing actions that are anti-family, maybe not necessarily relating that in their head to belonging. And maybe to your point, it's like, they don't have shirts for me, fuck them, that's not where I belong, you know? We're gonna say something.
Like if you, I know that you're specifically focusing on weight, which looks like if you ask barriers to access because of your body versus a barrier to access. I attended the Flying Wall Fashion Congress yesterday, and what they talked about is one of the lovely ladies that were there was talking about how she helped pull her side policy because it didn't. Like she'll go to the airport, she'll like pick out a helpers and be like, yeah, I have a receipt. And so I would be really curious to see if people have, like, if there is less of a, not a barrier or does not apply based on somebody's body rather than like just based on their weight and like that, like how those numbers would differ, like because of our own like bias.
So I think it kind of like shifts it from a perception, right? Normal weight is a perception of what is normal. And not only that, but like, it's not nice language in anything or language. And then on top of that, like, if you switch the question to like, what image best represents your body size and shape? And have like images that represent like a thin person, a mid-sized fat person, a long fat person, and a fit fat person, like, and then have to choose, you know, like that kind of image that best represents your body, then I think that we get better information about like that kind of, if it's like, sorry, like if it was not just like an entire body, but like thighs. And if you're talking about chairs, it's like thighs and, you know.
Right.
Because then you can make a case that like, well, this is not just accessible because I'm fat, like not accessible because I'm fat, but like this wouldn't be accessible for a disabled person.
Right.
Like, in my work, I'm like, hey, this is something, it's not gonna be.
Right.
And like, you are required to be accessible for a wheelchair.
Yeah, you'll see a little bit later. We'll talk more about, I think, the importance of intersection in this kind of work. The interesting thing about if the question about weight was a picture, would you be more or less inclined to give the quote unquote correct answer? Because remember we were talking about like the Bitmojis, and Facebook made this new emoji of me that I don't like. I didn't tell them they could make her that fat. So if I saw images and I had to pick the body that looked most like mine, like I'm okay doing that on like those like Wantable or whatever, where you're trying to figure out your, you know, what kind of clothes look best on you. But would I feel comfortable on a work survey? I'd just be curious if that changes. Like, it was anonymous, yeah, there was, yeah.
That like in the space where you have this, that folks might be concerned with that because that's identified. However, I think that this survey is very exciting and can be applied in the workplace in general. And like has a real like good potential to like be used to assess like working conditions, you know, not just at the university specifically. And I think like if I were taking a survey and I knew it was like a sample size, didn't have the personal identifying information, then yeah. But this labs are talking about to exist and they're validated, you're studying with them. And they consistently find that women rate themselves as larger and men rate themselves lower than they actually are, but it's replicated enough. Yeah. So we choose larger or like that? Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any students analysis, but yeah, I would suppose. And rate themselves lower, smaller than they are.
Did you want to say something?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
but it's pretty. Yeah.
Having this conversation. Okay, so now let's get into quotes. I just pulled some, again, I didn't pull all 60. I've experienced bias from male colleagues who make comments about the value of women based on their weight and overall attractiveness and often behave accordingly. And by the way, behave accordingly. I have also experienced male colleagues commenting about the weight gain of our female colleagues in a disparaging way a couple of times, male colleagues made a comment about my weight gain and implied that what I am doing for weight management isn't working. Can we put that? Can we just put that on the tape? What? You're not wrong. This comment to me is about the intersection of fatness and gender, right? And I think there's something to be said about the comfort that people feel about giving direct feedback to someone about their body, particularly, I think, men in general. I think women do it in different ways, like maybe it's more self-deprecating. But men seem to think they may apply that. Again, painting with a wine brush. But no one in the room is telling me that this is crazy. I'm gonna go on to the next one unless anybody else wants to say anything. So this one, oh my God, where's my Reddit? It just broke my heart. Do you guys want me to read it out loud or? Okay. Okay, so this is about power, right? Which I was in the Reclaiming Body Trust workshop yesterday, and they talked a lot about how, like, intersectionality. Yes, it's about the identity, but you have to include the power dynamics of those intersections as well, right? So, for anyone who doesn't work in higher ed, your dean would be the person who's in charge of your whole area. So, like, let's say liberal arts has a dean, and then each, like, humanities, psychology, English would each have their own coordinator or chairperson, coordinators for programs that are not, you don't need to know that. So, and then the instructor. So this is an instructor who wanted to lodge a complaint, but was told, well, don't worry, you're gonna retire soon anyway, as a way to deal with something. And they still feel this, even though it's been years later, because we know that trauma digs deep into us, right? I don't know, it boggles my mind, but I think that in institutions of higher education and maybe private businesses too, people get jobs and they don't leave, right, until they retire. If you've got a pension or whatever it is, like you're tenured, if you're a C-suite and you're not going anywhere, I'm assuming you're planning to stick around, like you are causing harm. And this one's about body privilege, right? Thin body privilege. So I think comments like this help us open the door for understanding, because just like any other marginalized group, you don't get anywhere on your own, unfortunately, and you're gonna need allies who get it. So people who maybe can't identify with anti-fatness might better be able to read this and get it to an extent, just to help bring in understanding. Because I do think it's really, unfortunately, I think it's really new for people to think about this way, because ultimately fatness is seen as a choice in a lot of spaces. So, right, so what made this student feel comfortable to write this kind of thing? Did they get a bad grade and they're just like acting out, which is, I guess, another issue. It's a separate issue, but I mean, yeah, welcome to the internet, right? No consequences for being horrible.
Another like that person.
Yes. Right, well, and you see that in other marginalized communities, right? I think, if we think about, again, painting with a wine brush, and maybe not today, but historically, Black folks who maybe were lighter skin versus darker skin or giving poor treatment to darker skin, or maybe because disability is such a wide, a wide spectrum, it might be, your privilege changes where you are, right? So I work with deaf folks. Deaf folks in their own community have their own layers of oppression among each other, can you speak at all? Like, where people can understand you? Do you have residual hearing to rely on? Or the opposite, right? Little tidbit has, most deaf folks have parents who can hear. So it's very rare for deaf babies to come from deaf like parents. So some people say, well, I have generational deafness in my family and I have more privilege than you do because you came from a hearing family. So there are ways that marginalized folks oppress other marginalized folks, to your point. Yeah. And then this second one, and there's just two on this slide because they were both small, short, self-pressure. When I think about my own self taking the survey, like I took my survey and I wasn't someone who answered everything's horrible and this place sucks, burn it down. Because what I realized is that everything that I experience is inside, right? It's all that internalized stuff. I go into a room, and maybe not so much anymore because I've been there for like 8 years, but I would go into a room and I would look at the other bodies because I didn't know who people were. So I was judging my body against theirs. I was judging how much food I put on my plate at an event. And I don't know if this is related to my body or not, but like I would sit through meetings and not get up and go to the bathroom because I didn't want the chair to squeak, or I didn't want it to draw any attention to myself. I'm squeezing her. Thank you. Yes, yes. So I knew that I felt, but I couldn't say, and you're the one that made me feel that, right? Because it's just bigger than that individual. One or two of the people that responded wrote very long narratives that were really vulnerable and helpful. But when I thought about this, I thought about, isolating, unsupported, undersupported. We talked a little bit about, and I'll get into this more, fat allyship in a workshop I was able to give on campus since then. But, doesn't this sound like other marginalized groups that we know, right? Not having the energy to educate other people, not having the bandwidth to fight. And then also, wanting to see our administration, our leaders, like speak up and acknowledge these things and to be vocal about it. Yeah, so we do a lot on campus about marginalized groups, but not so much about fatness at the moment, or at least not until this. But right, so employees have professional development funds. You only get so much a year. I mean, it's great that we have it, so I'm not complaining, but you can aggregate from other people too, right? But this is an HR issue. Not having a clearly stated policy that you can do this, that you can buy that second airplane seat, and then that because it's not formalized and institutionalized, I have to talk to my supervisor, who may or may not have a body like me, or maybe I'm a fat woman and he's a dude, and that changes my comfort level of talking to them about it. So if it were institutionalized, it would just be part of the system, and it would be built in, and you would just get your second seat. And then these are just some of the themes that I tried to pull out of all of those 60 comments, right? So a couple people had these, why can't we all just get along mentalities, kind of like, well, I just think it would be better if everybody respects each other. And like, that person is well intended, but that doesn't get us I don't see color, exactly. I have fat friends. Chairs, regalia was another thing that I learned a lot about, right? So the gowns that folks wear for graduation. Apparently, as I was told, you tell them your height, that's it. And the gowns come, and they don't fit, and you're a PhD who's gonna go sit on the stage, and they cost a fortune. And you look like you don't belong because you're the fatty in the thing that doesn't fit, and who feels good about that? I will tell you about that. There's a happy ending to that story. It's on the way. People thinking about, yeah. Oh, it is? Oh, no. There's 2 hours. I have 2 hours. Yeah, thank you. I double checked. Is everybody good? Okay, good. Questions about gender and weight bias, unhealthy food choices on campus, which also relates to students, right? Straight size folks fat shaming themselves publicly. There was a lot of comments about that. Saying that we don't think we have a problem, which is back to like, we don't see color. And then also, love and hate for the rec center, right? Because like the picture that is on the carousel of our internet for the rec center is this slim person with a clipboard, the trainer, talking to someone in a pudgy body about coming in for a free assessment. So, you know, what does that already say? But also praise for them too, because wellness is really trying to do things that are not just so, like in the fall, we had a haze workshop, all the other resets. So baby steps. Okay. So a little bit left. One of my professors who I really love does this thing where he talks about, so what, who cares, right? Why is this important? How do you, who does it matter to and why? So this is just a slide. I had the opportunity to present to Executive Council, which is our president's level down advisors, and that's made up of administrators. Our core values: respect, integrity, collaboration, and excellence. This is sort of, I guess what I'm saying is, this is that, and I'm going to talk about it more, but this is that interest convergence, right? This is, I presented them with this and said, this is why you need to care about this. This is why we should be talking about it. We also employ a culture of care at Harvard. So we have a Hawks Care pantry for our students. We have a job placement resource center for our students. We have grants that are like, I can't think of what they're called, finish line grants to get students, just to get them graduated. So we have counselors on campus, career counselors. Culture of care is very embedded into who we are. So to me, it makes sense that this be part of what we're doing as well. We're very committed to employee retention, belonging, and inclusion. We have a strategic plan every 4 years. Right now, we're in the off year where we're planning the next plan. But in the last strategic plan, it said developing a common language around equity. So now we have this great online literacy like glossary of all the words that are important to us and making sure we're using the right vocabulary. And I've been asked to be a part of making sure that the right words, language is in there for anti-fat bias. And something that I've done is reaching out to the people who are interested in continuing the conversation to learn about like what language feels good to us as our community. The SWORD framework is search, onboard, advance, and realize, and that's a framework we use with students, help them launch and then graduate or transfer, because again, we're a community college. Like I said, diversity, equity, inclusion as a part of our campus, and just the intersection of weight and all the other isms. Because again, if we understand intersectionality, we understand that anti-fat bias is exacerbating what those communities are already feeling. Fat phobia, as we know, is rooted in racism, sexism, and ableism. And again, we use words like transform. So we're already doing good work. We transform lives and we need change. So here's what happened after. After the survey, the chief of staff, our president's chief of staff, so he is her right-hand guy, was in the room and he came to me immediately and he said, let's talk about regalia. I didn't know this was a problem. So we met, I shared with him a little bit more of the survey. No one has seen. You are the only people that have seen the answers to all the questions. I pulled important data and I pulled some of the comments. So we talked about the regalia, we talked about chairs, we talked about some other things right away. I was able to present Weight Bias 101 and some of the survey findings at our professional development day last year. And the room was full, which was great. It felt really great, but also like it meant that people gave a shit. And then we also have this social justice series for students, and it's a distinction you can get on your transcript if you've taken this like group of classes. But last March, the spotlight event was on bodily autonomy. So one faculty member gave a talk about her experience through a double mastectomy that she did not want to have reconstruction for, and how difficult that was. Like, because doctors just normalized that you should want breasts, and she didn't. Another faculty member talked about their trans experience, and then I talked about fatness as bodily autonomy. I also met with the executive council, and I kind of just wanted their blessing, right? Like, I don't have a budget of anybody else's office. Wellness has been great to work with. I work with them a lot. The cultural center is really supportive, but you know, they've got their hands in a lot of different stuff too. So I really just wanted someone to say, yes, keep doing these things, but also like, do it the way you want to do it. Because I think, you know, every time something gets institutionalized, things can change. So right now, I have their blessing, and I'm just going to keep doing things until somebody tells me I can't do it anymore. But I also began a monthly newsletter, and in that I have like little articles, or I try to post content that's intersectional, teaching events, things like that. I presented to Dean's Council because they specifically wanted to talk more about chairs, which led to an inventory of all the chairs on campus right now, and like new spaces that are going to be coming on board. I have a lot of construction. We've got like 2 years worth of construction coming on. I collaborated with Wellness. We brought Your Fat Friend, the documentary, to campus. We showed it in 2 parts so that our employees can't take off like 2 hours in the middle of the day. But we did it in 2 parts where we watched half the film and talked about it and had lunch. Food brings people. And we did that like 2 weeks apart. And the discussion was really interesting because it was pretty quiet. Like people didn't know what to think. The surveys were interesting. Some people just said like, I never thought of this before, or it made me think about somebody said to me, I wasn't prepared for my own vulnerability that was gonna come out. And then I held a private screening of the film with one office that like the whole team wanted to come, but they couldn't all like come at the same time. So that was the day that I got my certificate. Next to it is the poster presentation that I, as part of the social justice cohort, we had to do a poster presentation at International Education Summit. And then we didn't formally present, people could come by and talk with you about your project. These are all of the newsletters that I put out. I just certainly don't expect you to be able to read it, but my goal is to do one every month during the fall and spring semesters. And I'm just trying to put in information about language or what I just released for January was about like New Year's resolutions is not really the time you should be trying to change anything. And like, don't buy into this like consumerism part of it. And I talk about capitalism and radically just like loving yourself. These were just some pictures of the presentations I got to give and the Your Fat Friend flyer that we made. Just do a time check. Cool, we've got 20 minutes. This is what I want to do next. The newsletter, I send out through Distro, and it's just like, send it to anybody else that you think would enjoy it. I think I've got about 40 people on there, the president's on there, the chief of staff is on there, a couple other folks, our provost. Our provost is the one who agreed to pay for me to come and do this, which was great. So I feel supported by my institution. So people want social meetups. They just want to be able to get together and feel human, like we get to do by being in a place like FatCon, right? We've got the license for the film for a year, so we hope to show it again and maybe show it to students. Wellness is doing a Love Your Selfie event in February that they just asked me to participate in. We're building that language around our lexicon. I told you about the glossary. I don't know if we could have an employee resource group or an affinity group down the road. Something I'm hoping to do in April is a panel called Fat and, so it's fatness at the intersection of all of those ERG groups that we have. And I want to bring in folks that are not on campus so that our folks don't have to do that emotional labor to just come and hear, to talk about how intersection impacts. I also am hoping to do a faculty workshop. GEC is a graduate level equivalency, but maybe if we can't give credit, it could just be a workshop, but to talk specifically to faculty about their experience with students. Continue to share pieces of the survey, more employee surveys down the road, and I'd love to do a student survey. My dissertation, I hope, will be about the experience of fat children in relation to their experience with their teachers, because we know that teachers make a huge impact on students. So this was just this is the last like meaty slide that I have, and then we can just talk more. But it's just suggestions about how it has gone and what I would offer to you if you find yourself in this place. Know your audience and your sub-audiences. I talk to students differently than the way that I talk to my peers versus the way I talk to administrators. Make those grassroots connections, again, because this isn't formalized or institutionalized. It's all about connecting. Find champions, people who have more power than you that can lead you to different spaces. Seek interest convergence, which I think is really important. That's just about, let me convince you how this will better what you're trying to do, and then we both win. Lean on intersectionality, because you can't just take your opinion or your position. You have to include like everyone, like nobody's winning unless we're all winning. Connect to your mission. If you can convince whoever's above you that they should care because this connects directly to the good work that we're doing, that would get you buy-in. Have data. We're very data informed at our campus. And so the statistics that I shared is the kind of information that people are going to pay attention to. I can't just walk in and say, well, I think people probably feel uncomfortable in their bodies here because of the chairs. But I can say, well, 203 people all agree that those wobbly ass chairs are not good. Slow roll your introduction. So right now, doing a little bit, letting it marinate. Right? Be brave. I remember sitting down with some other folks, specifically a good friend of mine on campus, and she is Black. And I said to her, I said, this feels so self-serving. And she said, it does feel that way when you're starting because you care about this thing. And so I think you have to be brave because you're opening yourself up, you're stepping into this space, you're existing in this body. So it does feel like, well, I have a problem, but I know that other people feel this way too. So I think that ties back into the last step, which is like, keep going also. Any questions? Or than what I'm so glad we had like this depth of conversation. Okay. If you have any more thoughts or feelings or questions or ideas, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm paying the cat tax. They're my babies. And I'm not worried about them while I'm traveling because I know he's taking care of them. And thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Or they
It's an awesome.
not because I think I'm an old person and I don't understand, but maybe I will be. Um, yeah, yeah. I do need to put my business cards out, but I can certainly share with your email. And I know you came in a little bit late, but if anybody's interested in the PowerPoint, I can email that to you. So, okay, awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of the con.
Oh, yes. Oh, food, yes. Oh. Yeah. I'm so glad you did. Thank you. Well, you know, the funny thing is that's one of my cats.